Hey you guys, this is Courtney with Courtney Robinson Yoga, and so I wanted to do a post a little bit on some of the ups and downs of being a yoga therapist, and it's mostly ups, but I will say, as someone who's been in the yoga world for a long time, when I started in the yoga world started as a professional, that was 2001. Now, prior to that, I had volunteered my time teaching yoga, but I wasn't being paid for it. So as a professional paid yoga teacher, back in those days in the South, I was called a witch. We were very rare. There were not very many yoga teachers or yoga classes, for that matter. There was a yoga studio, but it was kind of on the down low in my community. And so being a yoga therapist these days sometimes feels like that as well. So fast forward 18 years, and I've been teaching now I'm in my 17th or 18th year. Sometimes I get confused. But, you know, I've owned a school for 10 years. I've trained about 200 teachers now. And I come here to the clinic. I'm about to go in just a minute every day. And a bunch of my students now are doing yoga therapy as well. And I even have one that's in school for yoga therapy. And so sometimes we talk about the positives and the negatives, and what I would like to explain is a few things, or just give you a few things about yoga therapy that you may not be familiar with. So working in the medical community, whether you're a yoga therapist, yoga teacher, whatever your title is oftentimes challenging, because the people who might be in front of you might not really want to be in front of you. And that can be hard because they're not exactly excited to see you. Let me give you an example. So I go to work, and I have to teach imagery. It's part of my prescription with the Ornish group that I work for. And I will often say, how many of you have ever used visualization or imagery? And no one raises their hands. Now, if I'm teaching a yoga workshop to a bunch of yoga teachers, everyone's like, me, raising their hands. So, you know, you're with a bunch of people who, first of all, are skeptical about you. They're not really trusting. You don't know what information they've gotten about yoga. Here, especially in the Bible Belt, there are still some churches that preach that yoga is like a religion, and that closing and clearing your mind will let the demons come in. So you have to face that, and you just never know what you're being faced with. So one thing I would tell you all is, if you're going into the medical field, or you're working in a situation where people may not necessarily want to be with you. I found this when I worked at a college for 10 years too. People thought I would be the easy PE class, and so they just joined, but they didn't really want to be there. You need supporters on the outside. You need to have some contact occasionally with people who actually want to see you. And you just have to do your job. And when someone says something positive to you, like, hey, does this help my ankle? Because I noticed my ankle's not hurting and I had surgery a while back. Then you have to really enjoy and savor those moments, because that's your feedback. That's your positive feedback. Or, I noticed I'm sleeping better, or I didn't really think I would like this yoga practice, but I found myself just kind of going to my happy place. They'll use language that we might not use as yoga practitioners so much, but it will let you know that they're benefiting. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is when you're out in the public and people ask you what you do. The word yoga therapist is kind of like, what? What is that? And they don't really ask. People ask me a lot of times, I hear you say your clients, are you a psychologist? Are you a social worker? And I'm like, no, I'm a yoga therapist. And people don't know what that is. They don't understand how much work that, like, you either have to have a master's degree or a training that you went to for a minimum of like 4 years, or you had to have been grandfathered in after 10 years and a minimum of 1,000 hours of practice, and you have to prove your education. So, you know, generally it's about a master's level degree education. But people here don't know that. Now, when I travel and I'm in, you know, Washington, D.C. or a bigger urban area, they have yoga therapists in schools and medical clinics. It's a lot more common. So the up and down is just trying to explain to the public what you do. And it doesn't really for the most part, unless someone's really into yoga, it's not something that gets a lot of respect. And that can be challenging as well. And then people kind of think that you're a woo-woo kind of person. The other thing is the pay. There's not a real standard out there for what we get paid. And so if you go to work in like the medical world, I'm gonna just turn this just a little bit. If you go to work in like the medical world, they may not know what the pay rate is. And so I'll just tell you, as of this taping, the pay rate when you're a brand new yoga teacher is about $25 in the South. In urban areas right now, it's about $65 to $75. And that's just for a yoga teacher. Now, I was hired, they wanted a 500 hour with 10 years experience. And at the time, yoga therapist was not a certificate. So I had that. And so I'm not going to tell you what I make because that's hush hush. But I will tell you that it's the average going rate that yoga, that IYT kind of puts out there and has seen, and that's our certification, is anywhere from $50 to $200 an hour on the high end. So $50 an hour is kind of what I'm seeing as the average, and that's generally for people who are starting out yoga therapists, and then they're working in a clinic. So $50 to $65 an hour, upwards of $100. In private practice, depending on where you're located, you can ask about $100 to $200 an hour. I have not seen anyone charging $200 an hour. I have heard of one person in this area, and based on their experience, I think that's a bit exorbitant. I was getting $100 an hour, but because I wanted to attract a clientele that might need it, I went down to about $65 there for a while. And I'm not doing private work right now, but I'll probably charge about $75 to $100 if I go back into doing private practice. So the pay grade is all over the place because it hasn't been around enough for people to really figure out what do we pay a yoga therapist. And I know the VA right now is hiring for a yoga like director, which is a job I've had. I want to say it's about $40,000 to $45,000 for full time. For a yoga therapist, I want to say it comes in at a master's level, and it's around $60,000 with full benefits. So those jobs are really hard to find, and there is no pay scale really out there. Even where I work, each clinic pays differently. That's why I can't say what I make, but it wouldn't be fair for me to do that because it's not, you know, a college is going to pay different than a doctor's office. It's going to pay different than a hospital, and it's not my job to do that, and I could actually get fired for saying that. So anywhere as a yoga teacher, $25 to $75 an hour, depending on rural or urban. Yoga therapist or advanced teacher doing yoga therapy type work, $50 to $200 an hour. So those are kind of some of the ups and downs, and I'd like to add one more, and then I gotta run, is the other one is the fact that you have to go to work every day when you don't feel like it. I just came from the dentist. My mouth is really sore. They poked around on me to try to find out what the problem was, and it turns out I've got some ligament issues going on in my face. And so to be honest, I love my job, but I don't really feel like going in and talking for an hour, and I can't really take off because I don't feel like talking. So you got to buck up, and I guess that's a lot of jobs, right? You got to suck it up and do it. So you kind of learn these general patterns that you can remember as a yoga therapist. And when you're in a medical setting, you're going to repeat things a lot more than when you're in a private setting where it's individualized. So that's kind of an easy and a hard part. That would be another thing, is sometimes it's good to have things that are very succinct that you do over and over and over again because you don't have to think that hard. And then other times it would be nice to feel like you could be a little bit more creative, like in private practice. But my brain doesn't hurt as much. And I love not having to worry about scheduling people and collecting payments and all of that. So that's a good thing. All right, there you go. The ups and downs of being a yoga therapist. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you want to do consulting with me, my rates are very reasonable. You can go to balanceyogaandwellness.com or CourtneyRobinsonYoga.com, stressmanagementyoga.com. it'll lead you all to me. So even Googling my name, Courtney Butler Robinson Yoga, will give you tons and tons of information on me. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, folks. Bye-bye.